Mayor Breed, thank you so much for joining us for Night of Ideas. The theme for this year's event is Closing the Distance, which feels so fitting because all the ways that this pandemic has literally forced us apart physically. A lot of us are feeling distance, but it's also widened economic gaps, health disparities, has exposed the distance that we have to cover to address racial injustice and political division. And I wonder, what are the gaps, the fissures that the pandemic has exacerbated in San Francisco that worry you the most?
Well, in the beginning of this pandemic, we knew that there would be gaps. We knew that there would be challenges. And we embedded in our emergency response for COVID an equity team so that we can begin the process of reaching out to so many of those communities who were afraid, who were uncertain, who were concerned financially about how they would make a living. And I think, those continue to be some of the biggest challenges that we face, as businesses are closed, as people are working from home. There are people who can't collect unemployment. There are people who have no other financial resource, and that continues to definitely be very challenging. And also, those same people are taking chances by going to work, and if they're exposed, they oftentimes may not feel comfortable getting tested because they don't know where their next paycheck is coming from, which is why we started a program here in San Francisco to cover 2 weeks pay for those who test positive, who need to quarantine, who need to isolate during that time so that they are not missing the financial resources that they so desperately need in order to take care of themselves. And I think that has probably been the biggest challenge, is making sure that we have enough resources, that we're connecting to people who may not be familiar with what's available, and that we're doing the very best we can to get people tested, and now to get them vaccinated and to get our city and our economy going again.
Yeah, there is so much. I mean, Night of Ideas in particular is about asking creative people, visionaries, artists, community leaders, young and old, to really reflect on what's needed to close the distance. And I'm curious, first, what role you feel like arts and culture play in a city like San Francisco, what it can do in this challenging time.
Well, I grew up in the Western Addition, and in fact, the African American Art and Culture Complex, where I served as executive director for 10 years. I grew up as a kid going to this space, dancing, singing, participating in plays. Now, I wasn't really very talented, but the fact that there was an option and the fact that there were instructors who were incredible artists who made me believe, that was so important to my life. I actually played in band. I played the French horn. I sang in a choir, even though you don't want to hear me sing a solo. Those experiences played a huge role in my upbringing and my understanding and appreciation for the arts, and also for talented people. I still remember this guy who I was in the advanced band with, Aaron Hamilton. He played the trumpet like no one's business. And we always had like a trumpet solo for Aaron because he was a rock star. And he went on to continue to play. And when I think about people and what changes they've had in life and experiences they had in life, oftentimes the arts has been a real important role into helping not only their development, but also, it has helped change and shape the lives of so many incredibly talented people in this city and in this country. And I do think it's important to make sure that people are exposed to those opportunities.
And so, what are you doing to support the city's creatives? I mean, they have been hit so hard by COVID 19. We have arts venues, restaurants, gathering spaces all closed, and culture, really programming that's been halted, basically.
Yeah, well, first of all, the resources, including funding from Grants for the Arts and cultural equity grants and all the money that we spend to support the arts, the city resources that we committed to the arts continue to go to those organizations. So a lot of those nonprofit organizations continue to be funded for the work that they do. And we've asked people to get creative around COVID, because even though their facilities are not open and they may not be paying the same expenses that they were before, they still have artists within their communities that they can continue to support. So we've done that. In addition, we provided some additional stipends to pay artists. to help support, just this very challenging time. We've increased grants and resources available to artists throughout San Francisco. A lot of the work that we've done has tried to focus on the fact that, many of these musicians who typically play or sing, they are not able to make money at, the restaurants or the venues that they perform at. And so providing another tool for them to receive funding in some capacity is something that we did in San Francisco. We were not able to support every single artist, but it was really a welcomed additional resources to the arts community. And so what we're going to continue to do is do everything we can to support them. It's going to be rough, but it's an important part of our culture in San Francisco. So we have to continue to do more.
It is such an important part of the culture of San Francisco. And San Francisco it's a global destination. It's known for its art, its culture, its landmarks. Do you worry that some of the vibrancy that these artists who are struggling, some of the vibrancy that they bring will be lost?
I definitely worry about that. And so we have to make sure that we get more creative in our abilities to support them. And a perfect example, just recently, we named San Francisco's new poet laureate. Tongo Eisen Martin is a native San Franciscan, and he actually worked as an instructor at the African American Art and Culture Complex when I was the executive director. And I really believe in paying artists. And I found out that we were paying our poet laureate here in San Francisco $5,000 for the 3-year time period that they serve as poet laureate for San Francisco. And we have been able to increase that amount to $35,000 a year, which was absolutely incredible because, here's the thing. The other opportunities that someone like Tongo would traditionally have, traveling all over the country and putting forth his work and participating in a number of events, he can't do that right now. And so part of what we have to do is think about, people like Tongo and other incredible artists in San Francisco. How do we make sure that we support their talent with respecting the fact that they should be paid for the work that they do? And so that is what we're trying to get at, is to make sure that not just those who can fill out an application or those who can write a great grant proposal are the ones that we fund. There's the everyday artist who is just a really incredible musician, but has never even received any city funds. How do we make sure that there's a direct connection there? And that's what I'm pushing the Arts Commission to focus on.
You've talked about the need to get creative. And I mean, in so many ways, this city is radically different now. It looks very different. It feels very different because of the shutdown, because of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you see any of these pandemic adaptations that have had to be made as a catalyst for radical changes that will be needed to really address the big problems that San Francisco faces with regard to climate change or housing equity, economic inequality, and health disparities, things like that. Are you seeing a path through some of these incredible shifts that the city has had to make?
Oh, definitely. Safe Streets is a perfect example. So many people in the city love our Safe Streets, our Shared Streets program, where people can walk in the middle of the street. Cars are still coming onto those streets, but they're being very careful, and people are biking, and you see kids playing, and it's really incredible. And what I like about that is people are starting to get to know their neighbors. People are choosing to walk or bike to places when they typically would just jump in their cars to go places. And I think ultimately that's going to help us become a better city, but it's going to also help with the environment. When you look at the restaurants and the parklets that they have now. And in the past, it was so hard to build a parklet and to go through this lengthy process to remove a parking space to do exactly what we're doing all over the city with so many restaurants. That's now, these places are now a destination for so many folks who are staying in their neighborhoods, who are walking to a restaurant in their neighborhoods and enjoying the outdoors, even when it's cold and rainy sometimes. So I think that even though we have real challenges, even though we're in the midst of pandemic, even though people are suffering mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and financially, when we're able to start to come out of this, I think we'll have a newfound appreciation for life. And also, some of the things that we learned during the COVID time period are going to be things that we'll be able to take with us and use in San Francisco that will make our city a better place for all of us. And so I'm excited about the future. I can't wait until this is over because I want to be in front of other people, around other people, talking to people directly without a mask. So I'm looking forward to that day. And so I'm really hopeful that some of the things that we've learned during this pandemic, we can carry with us into the future.
You know, you've been hailed for your quick, aggressive response to the pandemic. The threat was coming. You closed down the city early before there were really any cases that were known. And there's a lot has been made about why women-led cities have appeared to fare better than other places. But I'm curious if there are personal experiences that you drew from or continue to draw from to get you through the demands of this moment.
Well, I just, a lot of it is probably just comes from my grandmother who raised me because, there were things that she would make me do that I didn't want to do, but because it was in my best interest, she, as a parent, did what she had to do to take care of me. And so I draw on that experience as mayor because when I think about my role, it is to take care of the people of this city. And sometimes it's to make hard decisions and decisions that people may not agree with, but are in the best interest of the people of San Francisco. There was so much uncertainty when this virus first hit, and I didn't completely understand its impact and what it would mean. I just knew that I had a number of healthcare professionals in the city who I truly respect come to me and tell me what could happen in San Francisco, what could happen if we don't do anything. And so I had to sadly make a decision I never thought I would ever have to make as mayor, and that is not to just declare a state of emergency, but also to shut down the city, a major city like San Francisco. It was not an easy decision, but people's lives were on the line, and it was a necessary decision. And so I think I draw on the strength of my grandmother and what she instilled in me, the value of community, of taking care of your community, of supporting your community and giving back to your community, and doing the right thing. And people may not be completely happy about it or agree with it, but it was what was best for San Francisco when I made that decision, and I'm very proud that I was able to do that.
We have just sworn in a new administration. We have a President Biden and a Vice President Kamala Harris, of course, a San Francisco Bay Area native, a daughter of Oakland. I wonder if you think that could make a difference in terms of thinking about San Francisco's future.
I definitely think it's going to make a difference because Kamala spent most of her life here in the Bay Area. She worked in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. She worked here in San Francisco at the City Attorney's Office. She has been involved in Partners Ending Domestic Abuse, where they raise money and provide resources for those who are victims of domestic violence. She nurtured and helped a lot of young leaders in this city, including myself, people that she's provided opportunities to. She started the program Back on Track for low-level offenders to get back on track and get their lives together. And so her relationships with people who have struggled and have challenges and those who are leaders in the Bay Area and have done the work to help turn people's lives around. She understands that from an intimate perspective. And it's her work that she's done here and she's done on the state level to protect homeowners from the big banks, to help people who abuse our elderly and try to take advantage of them financially. She knows intimately the struggles that everyday people face. And that's the kind of person that you want at the decision table, because when these big decisions are being made about our country, about other countries, like Kamala is the kind of person who's going to wonder what happens to that little 5-year-old who basically may not even have shoes to walk to school. What happens to, the family who's not able to feed their children? What happens to the person who can't get their grandmother the care that they need? And so I think that is going to be important, to have someone who understands the lives of everyday people at the table making decisions, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on the Bay Area.
Who understands the gaps that are here and also the ground we have to cover. Mayor Breed, really great to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.